Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Malcriada, Thoughts of a Girl in a Sick World. And what a sick, sick world it is. This is Sodger Knives, here with you with another episode. And today's episode is called How Capitalism Kills Men. And honestly, I just put men because the artwork for this came to me in an idea, which was just like a corporate baddie girl killing like a guy, and I just ran with it. So yeah, where did the inspiration of this come from? Why did I want to talk about this? Honestly, I wanted to cover the relationships I've had with my dad, essentially, but not just that. I see it how relationships with our fathers, specifically working deadbeat dads, which I'll get into in a second, has affected the relationships between many oldest daughter, Latina daughters, Latina first-gen daughters, and first-gen kids in general, and kids in general. But specifically because I'm first-gen, and I'm Latina, and I'm one of the oldest daughters, I hated the way I was treated. And I just wanted to know why this happens, why so many of my friends have similar stories, why so many people across the world, across the nation, across everywhere has so many similar stories to mine. And the only reason and the only things that I always like end up, which most of us do, is, oh well, capitalism, oh well, white supremacy, oh well, blah blah blah. But enough about my sexy thrilling life. What's up with you? Anyways, yeah, let's get into it. All right, so first on the agenda, I have poverty robs childhood. When I was growing up, I hate to admit, but I have to admit that I feel like I was very spoiled. My dad spoiled me, but at what cost? My dad was very materialistic, and he came over here to the US with the big American dream, right? Chasing something. Doesn't know what, but I know that it's gonna look really amazing and flashy when I get it. And everyone is gonna know my name, and I'm gonna be el chingón de la familia. And this way of thinking really impacted me because I would witness how I saw my mom always struggling to, say yes to buying us things and stuff like that. Because one, she wasn't really told about the finances, about my dad. My dad would just do what he wanted, and she would have to deal with it. And she would see the way he would spend. She would only see the way he would give money to family, give money, spend money here, spend money that, spend money on like, stuff and things that weren't priority. But the thing is, like, I understand both of their perspectives. For so long, I understood my mom's perspective for the most part. And only now, as I grow as an adult, am I beginning to understand my father's side. Why? Because one, he never tells me anything. And two, because my mom presented one side of my dad to me. And now as I grow up and see the whole picture, I have a whole picture of both my parents. And I respect them both. I love them both. But damn. Y'all ran a doozle on, is that how you say? Ran a doozy on me. Y'all know what I mean. A chingin. Yeah, like, my dad was very materialistic and my mom is the opposite. Is the word frugal for it? I think so. Where you're very, like, I'll just get the cheapest things. I don't need anything. Like, and not that it's, like, a bad thing, Like, cool, mom. Like, I love that you love natural stuff. I love that you don't care for these material things. Like, the thing is, she doesn't have to because she was a housewife. No one was going to look at her and like say that many stuff because she never left the house. She didn't have to care about what people were saying about her. Her priorities was her family and her husband, and that was enough for her. But me as a child, as a first gen kid in a high school where the majority of the kids were, yes, Latino, but they're white Latinos. and they're all the rich white fresa kids who would go there. My dad was insistent that I would go attend these schools because that's what his compas would say. Over here in his compas here that had houses and families here in McAllen, the valley, they'd say like, oh, the most expensive district, the best district is Sharon. You have to have your kids there. That's where my kids are. And my dad was like, okay, I'm gonna go there then. That's where I'm gonna put my kids. The best, right? Bullshit. Like, these kids were awful to me. And they would make fun of like my clothes. They'd make fun of how I dressed. They'd make fun of how I talked. They'd say like, I tengo el nopal en la frente. I know that I look very pale at the time. I don't know. These were like blonde kids with green eyes, you know. And obviously I have lots of privileges as a paler bitch, but yeah, they were still fucking telling me all this shit. Like, it was awful. And these kids, the kids my dad wanted me to be like the most, the kids my dad wanted me to hang out with, were dicks to me and would call me names and would bully me and would like just be assholes and would just think of me as weird. I was just a weird kid, obviously. And now it's cool, you know what I mean? So it just really fucked me up when you leave high school and you're like, oh, that was stupid. Like, you peaked in high school, like. But yeah, it made me put an emphasis on the things that I didn't have when my dad is trying to live out of his means in the sake of upward mobility. And I love his ambition. I love that I never needed anything. I always had food. I always had, for the majority, food, water, shelter. For the most part, I did have it. Like, I can't come on and sit here and say like, oh no, we starved and da da da. We had to be in shelter sometimes. Like, there was fights. It was violent. It was typical. But I knew that there was always a way to get help and that I wouldn't die, you know? It was rough, and I've struggled living under below the poverty line. But yeah, it was just a really early time for me. But don't worry, like, this was me like in elementary school and maybe middle school, but not even. I would be jealous. I would want to wear the things that these other rich little girls were wearing because I think, oh, well, that's going to validate me. They'll accept me that way. But it wasn't anything about that. It wasn't what I was wearing. It wasn't how, it wasn't where I lived, because I lived right there with them at one point. Yeah, we got kicked out and we got thrown out and we had to move like 7 times in my whole life, honestly, like more. But not more, but yeah, it wasn't about what I had on my body. It was about me. It was that they didn't like me because I didn't look like them, because I didn't act like them, and because I liked school. Like, kids would bully me because I liked school, because I liked to learn. And it was just annoying. And yeah, like, capitalism creates a scarcity mentality, which, don't get me wrong, I don't want to deny like that poverty isn't a real thing. It is, because this is the world that we live in. This is the world that the people who came before us created and set up for themselves and not for everyone. And yeah, but if it wasn't for capitalism, we would all have everything we need, I believe. And if we were still following a tribal, communal way of living and listen to indigenous communities because they are very much alive, we would be in a better place. And yeah, I guess that's one of the examples of how poverty robs childhood. Capitalism robs childhood because it sets a standard for what a childhood should look like. Who does those standards fall upon? The family unit, the head of the household, which is typically and in a patriarchal society, a man. So, what are the standards that you need to have if you're going to be a happy family, nuclear family, yada, yada, yada? Well, you have to be straight, first of all. You have to have a wife. You have to have a house, a car, kids, create generational wealth somehow. And in immigrant households, they also feel pressure to send money back home to the country that they came from. And raise your hand if your dad is always sending money to everyone and everything, and their moms and their cousins and their uncles and their primas and everyone. Yeah. So he'd be like, I'm gonna sustain and provide for my entire family in Peru. Like, and I don't mind that. The thing is, that's great and lovely, but because we live in a capitalistic society, there's scarcity. And if my dad is giving all most of his money to this family and that family and he's neglecting his children, and he's neglecting a lot of like time spent with his children because he's being the leader, the man for so many others. And I hate that he has to deal with that, because in a perfect world, in a world without capitalism, in a world based on communal living, providing for your whole family is not a bad thing. A lot of the good intentions that our families have, they're good, but they're morphed by capitalism. This idea comes to mind. Raise your hand if your dad has another family. A secret family. Secret family. Secret family. Yeah. I didn't know that it was a common thing in the like Latino community, and in lots of communities apparently, that like men just go around having other families. And I was like, what? That's straight out of telenovela. And I was like, oh, I'm in a telenovela. Because yeah, like I just like one day I found out that my dad has like a whole nother family, and he kept it a secret. Like my parents kept it a secret from us. And here's the thing. When I found out, I wasn't that mad. I was like, damn, like, why did you... So like, that's why you left. You know what I mean? You left us. Because if I found out that he had another family, then he has to talk about the story where he left us when I was little. He would say he was gonna work, but like I wasn't that dumb. Like he worked in he was an exterminator. He is an exterminator. He's an exterminating whatever. You don't care. And like you don't take months to do this type of work, King. You were living somewhere else with another family. You would come to us because we were your past. Anyways, sorry. I get to vent here, okay? I get to vent here. This is my podcast. And now as an adult who understands the importance of consent in non-monogamous relationships, like, I'm like, you didn't have to do all that. You could have just, like, talked it out. You could have literally been like, hey, like, literally sat us down. If you could have just communicated that, hey, I'm not happy here. Hey, I want a divorce. Hey, but no, like, it doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? Because you have to stay with your wife. You have to stay with your husband. You have to stay with the man who is a super bad person and is toxic and abusive, because that's the father of your children. You have to stay with him because that's the father of your children. You have to stay with this woman. She's the mother of your child. No. And I wish my parents got divorced. You know what I mean? And so many people wish that their parents had gotten divorced in the past, because it would have made their life so much easier. But because there's this standard, there are these standards. I read this article. I'll link it in the show notes. Show notes. Your mom. It talks about how in indigenous communities pre-colonization, sex wasn't a thing that you experimented only after you experienced only after marriage. Sex, you were expected to, not like told and expected, like, hey, you have to have sex. And no, like, it was just, oh yeah, like, obviously you're gonna have sex before you choose like a partner or your partners or whatever. And women were sexually liberated and would choose their partners. It was all about consent, and it was all about, again, fucking community and not ruling over people's bodies. I want this type of freedom, but I want this type of freedom for all genders, for all humans and not just for men. Because the way we are producing things, the way we are sustaining our families, the way we are sustaining our government, our environment, our schools, all the systems, all the agencies, it's not in a sustainable way. It's in a destructive way. It's in a selfish way. And yeah. Moving on. But yeah, the conditioning of individuals. Two distinctions. I guess I want to talk about why the title, How Capitalism Kills Men goes a little deeper. I've seen a lot of people talk about how, we shouldn't center the oppressor in everything we talk about. So decolonization, how patriarchy hurts men too. I get it. I love that. I understand that. But in this specific one, I need to say how capitalism kills men. Under capitalism, men are conditioned as human beings. Females, non-binary folk, intersex folk, and trans folk are conditioned as other, as objects. And I'll explain why in a second. The mentality that capitalism carries is still super childish. It's a really childish way of thinking. Like, I'm going to get everything I want because I can and fuck everyone else who I'm not related to. Like, bitch, you're a child of the earth. You're related to everyone. The mentality is so immature, but it's the one that men are conditioned into. And they're conditioned to accept it. And I said men on purpose because women, non-binary people, and trans folk are indoctrinated as well. But not like human beings, like commodities, like objects. Machismo stunts males. Males are conditioned through machismo. Strong bodies, weak minds. As the head of the house, you're the first to wake up and you're the last to come home. You're juggling 2 or more families, providing for them all. I know you're tired. You're too tired. You're too tired to be present, to be a present husband, to be a present dad. But you are excused. You're forgiven. Because your humanity is locked in, solidified. No one doubts you. You say you're tired, no one questions you. You say you're angry, no one questions you. You say you're upset, you're sad, no one questions you. No one gaslights you into thinking that you should have not been tired or feeling whatever you're feeling. Women are them. Because females, non-binary folk, and trans folk cannot get tired because we are the objects. We are there to help and make their lives easier. We are commodities. Like, I didn't see my mom eat for like a really long time. Like a really, really long time. She'd sit at the table, she'd just watch us. Because she, at one point, either she was too tired to eat, she was super depressed, she didn't have an outlet. But she got her husband fed. Did he ask why if she ate? No. That's her problem. She has to deal with that. And if she can't, tough. Like an object. Like, this pen will always do what I need it to do. But if I lose it, if I misplace it, it can't do anything. It just has to stay here. Because if not, I could just throw it in the trash and it will be out in the streets. That's how non-men are treated. Non-males are treated and conditioned. You're allowed to be tired. We'll let you be tired because you're a man. But you're not tired because you're a woman. Well, you don't do anything. What did you do? I thought that was a very interesting way of thinking. And when I thought about that, I don't know, you can't really go back. But it helps because now I'm like, hey, I'm not going to let anyone treat me like an object. And in some ways, like some type of bigger form, I don't have control over it, but like, I'm not gonna let people talk to me like that no more. But not the point. Moving on. But the saddest thing about seeing this, like, we see how men are excused. It's the children, the male children who are seeing this, growing up. They notice like their power and their identity. And some are ignorant, but most just assimilate. And which leads to there being just like a shit ton of guys who are just like, I don't know, just here, dude. I don't know. It leads to a generation of working deadbeat dads who they're just working and being providers because that's what the world tells you you need to be. What if you don't want that, dude? Have you ever stopped and been like, dude, I don't want kids, or I don't want a relationship? And I'm gonna be honest when I talk about that, and I'm not gonna lead people on. I'm gonna go travel. I'm gonna save. I'm not going to mess with girls' feelings. I'm gonna respect my body. I'm gonna figure out my sexuality and I'm gonna own it. I'm gonna be secure in my masculinity. I'm gonna explore styles. Like, but these men are trapped. And the saddest part is that like they don't want to be like this. It's not their fault. Like, it's not any of us' fault that we are in this type of system. It's been years and years of conditioning, but now it is our job, specifically, like, yes, has been the job of women to make women and others to make men's lives easier, but we're awake now. We've been awake. We're just waiting for y'all to notice and to fight back with us, not against us. I don't know what that was. Okay. But what is a working deadbeat dad? I'll tell you. A working deadbeat dad is a blue-collar dad that provides for most of your survival needs, but fails to be more emotionally present with his children. Usually, but not always, in combination with narcissist disorder, ADHD, and man-baby-bitch disorder. I came up with that. And I just can't help but like think like our fathers spend more time away from the family, and that's isolating. That's so isolating. This can lead to so many mental and physical disorders that they're too proud to even admit that they might have, or that there's something wrong, or that they need help. My dad just eats his feelings away. He knows that he has an issue. He knows that sometimes like he can't stop himself, like binge eating disorder. I used to have it too. I'm dealing with it right now. And then the thing is, like, I get my dad alone and we get to talk about these things, and I'm like, Dad, I see you. I see that you do this. I see that you only feel at home when you are partying with the family, because that makes you feel like you're back home in Peru. I see you. I see that you're tired. I see that. Like, I tell him like all the things that I empathize with him, and man, my dad cries. Like, he's like, he feels so like seen. I think he's like, how does she know that? And it's like, I studied you so much so you can open up to me. But as I grow up, I realized like there's so much I know about you and there's nothing you know about me. How's that fair? And I'm not putting blame towards my dad because he's just one person, right? There's so many more systems that go into it. But damn, there was like, sometimes I'm like, damn, there's people even back then who were fighting against the systems. Like this that I'm doing, this whole like agenda, whatever, like it's not new. The fight against the oppressive system, it's not new. It's been going on since the beginning of time. And there has been amazing leaders for each generation. And when when my dad and I are alone, again, like, I get him to, like, just open up. But then we're all, like, in a family situation one more time. Nope, I have to have this standard. I'm the man of the house. You guys respect me. It's tired. Fuck that. Like our families are depressed. Our moms are depressed. Our dads have ADHD. Our moms have BPD. Like, we all have so many of these mental disorders, and we're all dealing with. Some of them are aware. Some people are not aware, and it's just horrible. Because if he would just, like, I don't know, if our men in the Latino community would wake up and be like, hey, like, you know what? I fucked up. Like, how do we fix this? But no. And that is what the power of conditioning does. I wish I got to know the version of my dad who knew his worth. I wish I got to know the version of my dad who was in touch with his feminine side, who was kind and sympathetic instead of a bully 24/7. And I wish I got to see this version of him all the time. Not just after, like, a huge argument or a super deep conversation that ends in tears. You know how traumatic that is? That, like, oh, like, we can only show our love when we're done, like, doing this whole payasada. See, that's family at the end. Like, fight, only fight. And then like, after that, someone has to fucking make up. Oh, it's okay. But then the cycle continues over and over again. I don't claim to have all the answers. But from my experience, from the humble experience that I lived through as an oldest daughter, the one thing I would say to families and fathers is to just talk to your kids. Ask them what they're doing. Don't try to make them be like you. The world is ending. They don't have your time. They don't have the time you had. On the plus side, I would like to say some of the resources that I've seen. So there's this organization called Father to Father Incorporation in South Carolina. And it's basically like counseling and just a bunch of resources. And I thought that was, like, amazing. So shout out to Father to Father Inc. Please check out their work. And hey, if there's something, like, not like that where you're at, maybe that's your sign to make it. For Valley people back home, Mujeres Unidas, I know that there's a lot of, like, you know, just a lot of stuff with nonprofits, you know what I mean? But I volunteered at the BIP program, Battery Intervention and Prevention. But it's basically a program where they handle domestic abuse cases, and they offer counseling, and they go through like seminars where they talk about, like, this kind of stuff. They talk about, like, power dynamic, misogyny, machismo. I don't know if the lady who worked there is still there, but Belle, shout out. She was amazing. And yeah, there is resources out there for you to get better, for men to do better. And you just have to look for it. You have to put in the effort. Y'all have to put in the effort, goddamn. And I just want to say, as closing statements, like, the more pressing issue is how women, non-binary folk, intersex folk, and trans folk are being conditioned as objects and commodities in the world. And how we're screaming and crying, but no one is saying anything. because you can't hear us, because you don't see us or validate us as human beings. You think of us as some little thing that adorns your house or adorns your mind or helps you move forward. Like, oh, maybe I'll get a girlfriend. My girlfriend is my will to live. Like, life is worth living with my girlfriend. It's like, no, babe. That's not cute. I know that some girlies say that's cute, but it's not. Sorry for the low energy, guys. It's late and I had to re-record this episode because the first time I recorded it made no sense, but this time I think it did make sense. Very much so. I just got into thinking about how like capitalism like has hurt my father because there's so many promises that it has. It's like, you're gonna be a millionaire, you're gonna be this, you're gonna be it's bullshit. It's bullshit. And I feel bad that my father like was deceived that way, and that, you know, everyone is responsible for their own things, yes, but like, how do you fight the monster like that is capitalism? It almost got me, you know. Okay, whatever. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Malcriada, Thoughts of a Girl in a Sick World. And what a sick, sick world it is. This was your host, Sodger Knives, signing off. Pussy, pussy, pussy. Pussy, 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 pussy. Oh.